The PGA Tour announcing 2025 Player Advisory Council members. 16 guys. You see a handful of first-timers: Eric Hall, Trevor Cohn, Max McGreevy, and Gary Woodland. And Justin Thomas, now a veteran of the PGA Tour, a 15-time winner, a couple majors on the CV Rex. I understand that he released a memo, sent a letter to some guys kind of looking forward.
It was a letter to players, and it was based on the idea. He is actually on a subcommittee that had sort of addresses the idea of how players are tackling the product going forward. We've heard a lot about how the PGA Tour wants to improve the product. That means improving not only the access to players, but how the product is televised. And I think this went exactly to what JT was talking about. In this memo or this letter, he talks about doing in-round interviews. And you and I were talking earlier about it. It's something that the Golf Channel, CBS, is just trying new for this year. He even talked about doing pre-round interviews. As someone that carries a microphone.
Used to do it all the time. Used to do it, then those went away. Would love to see them come back.
And the idea of this letter is to try to get players to buy in the way he has. And I'm not giving away any secrets here, but last Sunday, JT sent our colleague, Johnson Wagner, a really long text. And it was kind of putting his money where his mouth is, pointing out, these are the things I'm looking forward to on Sunday. Here's my game plan. Like, there was one part of this text where he described he and his caddy were actually going to try to aim to rough on certain holes so he could have a better angle into holes. It's not earth-shattering secrets. He's not giving away state secrets, but this just gives an insight that I don't think fans have had an opportunity to have. And I have to give JT credit. Like, this is something he said that came to him watching docuseries and other sports, and how if you give fans a glimpse into what it's really like behind the scenes, if you pull back the curtain just enough, you're probably going to make a fan that you didn't have beforehand.
Yeah, he mentioned, other sports where you get even the 10-second one question to the college football coach or the NFL coach coming out of the locker room before the game or before halftime. He talked about how on-field or on-course personality really rates with the fans. I mean, good on Justin Thomas. He got granular in that letter.
He really did. And again, I enjoy the fact that he put his money where his mouth is. I also want to go back to, if you look at the members of the pack that were just announced, most years, you and I would not really be talking about this. It's something that kind of goes behind the scenes. It's inside politics on the PGA Tour. But you look at what happened on the PGA Tour as we transitioned from this year to next year with cutting the number of cards, reducing the field sizes. The PAC was directly involved with that. That was a big move by the PGA Tour that's going to impact every single member. And I think the players that are on the PAC now understand it more so in the past.
Right.
In the past, when I talked to a member of the PAC, they would almost roll their eyes. Like, yes, I've had to sit through meetings before, but the names that really stand out to me, there's a couple of them. You pointed out the first-timers. Gary Woodland has never really been interested in tour politics. I'm not saying that he shouldn't have been. Like, if you want to be a world-class player, you should probably focus on being a world-class player. But these guys, Gary Woodland being the primary example, understand you need to be part of the process. The other name that stands out on that list is Mav McNeely. And we talked about this in the fall. The idea that Mav decided to do the math himself and to show the PGA Tour, this is what we should be doing with field sizes. This is what we should be doing with fully exempt cards. It shows the passion, and it also shows a different angle.
Yeah.
If you come at it from a different angle, a player's perspective means something to the PGA Tour.
Yeah. Matt McNeely, a Stanford guy, no doubt. He has no problem doing the math and showing it to his buddies at the PGA Tour. Another guy who seems to get it and spend some time with the media and is very accessible is Sahith Theegala. He's a California native, no doubt excited to be teeing it up this week at Torrey Pines. I first met Sahith. It was during a practice round at the Open at St. Andrews. I'd never met him before. It was during a practice round. I just walked up to him during his round and said, "Hey, man, I'm Damon. Like you, I'm a Laker fan. I'm from Los Angeles." You know, he was so excited to be competing in the Open Championship. And even now that he's a winner, nothing's really changed. He's played in the President's Cup, I know, but he's still kind of that wide-eyed, happy-go-lucky, happy to be a member of the PGA Tour.
You always pull the Laker card, don't you?
Or the UCLA card, it's
one of the two.
Yes,
you always have to pull that one out.
I do.
And you're not even a front-running fan on that one. To go back to our conversation, the JT memo talking about players trying to be more, trying to give the audience a little bit better glimpse of who they actually are. And look, for some players, this is going to work, but you can't change your DNA. I will say for Sahith, he doesn't have to. I was watching that TGL match, fascinated by the idea of how much passion he had, how much fun he was having. He plays golf differently. He almost has a little Arnold Palmer to him.
Yeah, swashbuckling.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing conventional about his swing. He seems to go for broke on every single swing. He's exactly the type of player that I think fans would be drawn to for all the reasons you just pointed out.
Yeah, I think it's a good point you make. Listen, when there are new rules that are brought to a different sport, a shot clock, tennis has a serve clock, baseball has a clock, and maybe, it's for the next generation, the players that are just coming up. You institute pre-round interviews, you give a little more access. It becomes something they're used to. Might be harder for the 35, 40-year-old, 45, but for the 21-year-old who's just making his way on tour, I think they'd adapt very quickly.
And I think as someone who has tried to do these mid-round interviews with players, you have as well. And there's certain situations when it's going to work, and there's certain situations when it isn't going to work. It has to be a moving target. I'll point to Saturday. I did a walk and talk with Billy Horschel, who you and I both know. He's one of the best in the game when it comes to that. And he really gave some insight. We walked the 13th hole, that really hard par 3, and we talked about how would you play it. He did not hit a particularly good tee shot. It's worth pointing out. But that's pulling back the curtain and giving the fan insight that they didn't have before. I think you're right. The next generation is probably going to embrace that much better.
Yeah. And listen, coming off of a double or a triple bogey, there may be times where they don't want to talk. I'll never forget trying to get Hal Sutton after a round of golf. I think he made double. And he said, listen, I'm a hot tamale right now. He didn't want to do it. And I said, okay, I'm a hot tamale right now. I love the phrase. I wish we'd gotten him, on camera saying it, but he said he didn't want to talk, and that was okay.
And we had this debate last year at the U.S. Open when Rory decided not to speak with the media after the fact. And I certainly understand the emotions that went into that. It had to be heartbreaking for him. It took him a few days to process it. And his argument was he didn't have anything good to say in that moment. It wasn't until the next week at the Scottish Open when he actually opened up. And my point in that moment was, even if you had nothing to say, that emotion would have spoken volumes.
Yeah.
As journalists, we still would have used that emotion to paint how difficult that moment was for him.
I was holding the microphone for NBC, hoping to talk.
You chased the car, didn't you?
I went out there.
You did.
I'll tell you what, he made burnt rubber out of that parking lot in North Carolina. Rory obviously hoping for better in 2025. Sahith looking for his first major this season.